Hey guys, it's Andrew again, and I'm back to bring you another interesting health treatment that I tried for IBS. So, a little background, I've had IBS for roughly 20 years, starting from a kayaking incident where I ended up hitting my knee, it got infected, I took multiple months of antibiotics to clear the infection, and finally had to get the bone scraped out. But all of those months of taking antibiotics messed up my gut, and I've had IBS and then a number of other issues since then. And really, I started taking charge of it about 10 years ago. Been doing a lot of research and meeting with naturopaths and doctors, gastroenterologists, all sorts of different medical professionals to figure out what I could do. And this is really before a lot of the research on the microbiome came to prominence, like it has been recently. And from all of that research, I put together some plans that really helped me start getting better. That helped start treating the Crohn and other issues that I had that went along with the IBS. It happens with a lot of people. And I still have some of those IBS symptoms. Really, the ones that are most prominent are food allergies and food intolerances, and some of the side effects that leads to. So the food allergy tend to create a histamine like reaction or brain fog. Whereas the food intolerances that I have tend to create some GI distress, some gas and bloating, and sometimes some pain and cramping and discomfort, that kind of stuff, and then they'll subside after that food's out. So really, I wanted to continue my quest to properly balance my microbiome. And the treatment that I tried most recently is the elemental diet. So you might have heard about the elemental diet. Really, it's called the elemental diet because every part of it is broken down into the basic elements. You guys might have heard of like BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, which weightlifters or athletes tend to use as a form of protein that is very quickly absorbed. And it's very quickly absorbed because branched chain amino acids are the building blocks for the larger proteins. When you eat a piece of meat, it has all of the amino acids, whereas when you take like a BCAA shake, it has all of them as well, but they're all broken down, so they're very quickly absorbed. And so the elemental diet, it uses the branched chain amino acids that we just talked about, and then it has fats and sugars as well that are also broken down into their constituent parts, and therefore they get absorbed very easily. And so the whole point of this diet is you drink these shakes as a replacement for your normal food, and as a byproduct of these being absorbed so quickly, the bacteria that's in the distal end of your small intestine, the furthest end closest to your large intestine, and then the large intestine itself, get starved of nutrients. And when they're starved of nutrients, a lot of the bacteria die. And your body seems to be able to preferentially keep the good bacteria, or a lot more of the good bacteria, alive than the bad bacteria. So this has been very effective in treating IBS and IBD, irritable bowel disease, which I also have or had. I haven't had any clinical symptoms of it for 4 or 5 years now, but I still try and do the stuff that initially put it into remission and continue that to hopefully prevent it from coming back. So the elemental diet is very good at that. It's very effective. At 2 weeks, it's about 80% effective at putting SIBO and IBS into remission. SIBO also goes hand in hand with IBS. SIBO is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And at 3 weeks, it is about 85% effective. So very effective at inducing remission. There are a few other treatments that kind of go hand in hand with the elemental diet as the initial kind of treatment for IBS and SIBO. The initial treatment being something to disrupt whatever is wrong with the microbiome, right? And sometimes that can be colonization by pathogenic bacteria. It can be overgrowth of bacteria in general, or growth in places where it shouldn't be, like the small intestine, which is what causes SIBO. It can be like some archaeobacteria, which they're really still trying to figure out what all it does and how it colonizes the gut. There can really be a lot of different issues that lead to IBS and SIBO and the other diseases that come from the gut. And the elemental diet is one of the best ways to treat it. The others are rifaximin and neomycin, and then like some of the herbal antimicrobials like biocidin, right? All of those do that initial gut disruption and help treat especially pathogenic bacteria that can be in the gut. But the elemental diet has something on those in that the side effects, or like the potentially serious side effects, are much less frequent because you're not taking antibiotics, which can have a broader systemic effect. This is a nutrient replacement shake. And it also gives you bowel rest. And for people that have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or other diseases that cause ulcerations in the gut, the bowel rest can be especially helpful because, one, the ulcerations from those diseases tend to be from bacterial biofilm colonies, especially pathogenic ones, which are why they're really hard to get rid of. But those will be starved. The biofilm that covers it will be reduced in size, and so the symptoms should get better. And also with the bowel rest, it gives your body time and the ability to just repair the gut lining. And that's incredibly important for recovering from any of those diseases, and also IBS, because the degradation of the intestinal epithelium, the gut lining, tends to go hand in hand with symptoms. Like the worse your IBS, the more degradation there can be. And especially when you get to the point of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, it's very degraded. That's how the ulcerations are there, and that's what the ulcerations mean, right? There's obviously breaks in the epithelium for those ulcerations to exist, or there wouldn't be the pain and inflammation that you get from those ulcerations. So yeah, back to the diet itself. So I chose to do 2 weeks because I'm already in a pretty good place, right? Like I have tons of energy. I've dealt with nearly all of the majority of the IBS symptoms that I've had. My IBD has been in remission for 4 to 5 years now. My depression and anxiety has been in remission for almost a decade. And really, I'm just trying to get rid of the last little bits of autoimmunity, right? Like I still have some autoimmunity feelings triggered by certain foods, some headaches and like some histamine intolerance, and some brain fog, especially if I eat a lot of things that are like on the iffy list for me. And really, I want to try this diet, see what it can help with, what it can't help with. If I ever get a flare again, it will be another tool in the arsenal for dealing with that and helping me get back to being really healthy really quickly. So I ordered it. You're going to have to work with a physician to get it. I just happen to be friends with a lot of doctors, so they were able to just sign up and order the Elemental Diet for me. It basically just comes in like a big, like 5-pound bag that it's like a 5-pound bag of tapioca like you would get for a protein shake, but tapioca flavored, which you'll get really tired of the tapioca flavor after a couple of weeks, but it's much better than the alternative elemental diets. The specific brand that I got is actually called Integrative Therapeutics Physicians Elemental Diet, dextrose free. And that seems to be one of the most popular lately. There are apparently some issues with the formulations that contain the dextrose. So they decided to formulate a dextrose-free version as well, and it seems to work pretty well and have really good reviews. So it's recommended to do 1,800 calories of this per day. I did a little more because I didn't want to be losing weight during this treatment, so I was aiming for between 2,100 and 2,400 calories a day, which requires a couple extra scoops. Each scoop, I believe, is 150 calories. So I was doing 5 or so shakes per day with 3 scoops apiece. If you're doing the diet as directed by Integrative Therapeutics, you're going to be doing 4 shakes a day with 3 scoops, or whatever combination you want to get you to 12 scoops. And I started this about 3 weeks ago. And so I started this 3 weeks ago. And there was a little bit of difficulty processing it, especially for the first week. I didn't actually read the instructions that came from Integrative Therapeutics on how you're supposed to ingest this. And typically, I usually wake up in the morning with a protein shake mixed with a few other things like colostrum, because colostrum actually helps close the tight junctions in the intestine, which are responsible for some of the side effects that you get from having IBS and SIBO and leaky gut. So normally I make those protein shakes and then I chug them and everything's great. I go and start the rest of my day and everything's fine. But doing that with these, when I chug them, I would get nauseous maybe 30 minutes afterward, and the nausea would stay for a couple of hours and I wouldn't really want to have another shake. And very quickly, maybe 4 to 5 hours after, I would get rid of the rest of the shake. And after reading the manual from Integrative Therapeutics that they recommend for it, basically they say that you should not drink it that quickly. That by drinking it that quickly, it allows the fluid to get farther into your gut without being absorbed than it should. And that can defeat some of the reason why you're doing it, right? So I made the shakes and I just started sipping them. Basically, in the manual that they have, they recommend you watch a TV show or something while you're doing it, and then every time a commercial comes on. So basically, every 5 minutes or so, you should be taking a big swallow of this, and that allows the shake to be properly digested. And so as soon as I started doing that, the nausea went down a great deal, and the frequency of the diarrhea also decreased. So that was a really good thing to find. If you're planning on taking the elemental shake sometime in the future, definitely sip it slowly. It can be tempting to want to guzzle it down because the tapioca gets really gross after a while. The tapioca flavor itself is strong, so it can almost evoke a gag reflex after you start getting tired of it. But really, to stick to it, it's just 2 weeks. Sip it slowly, and the side effects should get better. Some more side effects that I got while on this diet were weight loss. I lost maybe 2 pounds. When I started the diet, I was about 158, and at the end, I was about 156. But even more interestingly, I lost about 4% body fat. Prior to the diet, I was about 13 or 14%, and then after the diet, I was around 9 or 10%. And you could really see that. I used to have a little bit puffier cheeks, and they've come back a little bit in the last week because I finished the diet about a week ago. But it was actually really interesting, like how quickly the body fat melted off while still maintaining a decent amount of weight. And I was not weightlifting during this time because I didn't have full amount of energy that I normally would until like maybe the end. But I was still doing a lot of the daily stretching and yoga type exercises that I do consistently for some of the other injuries that I Okay, so the last thing I wanted to go over was what the positive effect of this has been. And there's been a couple. So I monitor my gut health and my mental health pretty consistently. I have a big spreadsheet that accounts for roughly 50 different metrics of health. I have a blood pressure machine, I have a blood sugar machine, and a number of other metrics and health questionnaires and stuff that I use and keep track of different health issues that I have that I've been doing experiments and trying to test against. And I continue to do that after taking the shakes. And really, the ones that I was most concerned with were the ones related to gut health. So I found that many of my food allergies diminished. Not completely. So I had built up a bit of intolerance to egg, or allergy to egg, where it would give me headaches, and also intolerance to egg in that it might not always process well, and that definitely diminished. The same with some other allergen type foods. A lot of the nuts that I ate, I never really developed allergy or intolerance to almonds, but several other kinds of nuts, like macadamia nuts and cashews, I would have an allergen type response, and then I would have a mild asthmatic / histamine type reaction, and that's definitely diminished. The low grade congestion that I carried around for years diminished a great deal. I still have a little bit of congestion right now just because my kids got sick from school and gave it to my wife and I. But before that, I didn't have any of that congestion anymore. So that was great. And my gut health in general has been quite a bit better, or at least more consistent. Test it and keep track of it in a variety of ways, including the proximal reaction to food, like shortly after eating it, to see if there's like an allergic reaction or allergy axis reaction, including like a histamine type reaction, or if there is an indigestion, SIBO type reaction where I get bloating or I get fatigue or brain fog. And by all of those metrics, everything has gotten better. There's been a lot more consistency in the digestion of food, and there's also fewer symptoms on the allergen type axis response. Yeah, I think the elemental diet is great. The 2 weeks actually went by really quickly. In a day-to-day look at it, it is very annoying and can be tough to make it through the day only having these shakes, but you're pretty satisfied. The shakes contain a decent amount of calories, and as long as you are like backing up one shake with another shake, like you have them consistently throughout the day, like you're never really going to get hungry. You'll start craving some other foods, like I got a really strong craving for meat while I was taking these shakes. But after the shakes, I had, 8 ounces of chicken and some pork, and the craving went away almost immediately. So there's probably something in meat that my body was really craving that I wasn't getting from the elemental diet. But overall, things went really well. It really wasn't that hard, especially after I started sipping the shake instead of guzzling it. And the effects on my health have been similarly. There's a little bit of transitional issues after stopping the shake, in that when you stop, your gut flora and the biofilms and stuff in your gut are not going to be at the same level that they were prior. Basically, think of your gut microbiota as a rainforest. And after you take this, part of it is going to be brought down into a sparse forest. So it needs a while, anywhere from between 2 weeks and 6 months, to like reestablish all of those biofilms. Hopefully healthier biofilms, obviously. But it needs a while for it to rebalance itself and to adjust to digesting food the same way, because every other type of food that exists is harder to digest than the elemental diet. Don't really be surprised or worried if you have some digestion issues for like maybe a day or a couple of days. You can actually mitigate that by continuing with a half elemental diet and slowly reintroducing new foods, especially if you're introducing foods that are from either a low allergen or like an easy digestion type diet like GAPS or CD, right? You can take those foods and go through their phased dietary plans and slowly cut down on the elemental diet and replace that with those foods. And that's what I did, other than the eating a little bit of chicken and pork. But doing that kind of transition back into normal food was very effective. Digestion was great. I don't really expect digestion to be as good as it could be for a while. As I said, it looks like research shows that biofilms take maybe a minimum of 2 weeks to kind of form, but any kind of disruption of the gut can take 6 months and potentially even longer than that, like up to 2 years, for it to fully repopulate that rainforest of your microbiome. This can be a very effective tool, especially if you have some serious issues. And really, that's all I wanted to say about it. Again, don't take what I'm saying here as like medical advice, right? Like, you should absolutely be working with your physician. For the majority of people, you're not going to be able to get this yourself, so you'll need a physician to order it for you. Work with them. Whatever you learned here, whatever you take away from this, hopefully it's that this can be a great tool in addressing IBS, SIBO, any kind of IBD, and even other related illnesses like depression, anxiety, and other neurological disease. So it can be great for all of that. Keep it as an option for you to talk with your physician about and explore. And hopefully you guys got some good information from this. So I think that's going to be it for today. If you guys have any questions about me, about the diet, anything that I didn't cover, please add a comment or question below, and I will answer them. Thanks. Have a good one.